My name is Audrey, 35 years old, and I built my career as a software developer from absolutely nothing. Growing up, I always lived in the shadow of my golden child brother Derek. 3 days ago, I received a phone call from him that completely blindsided me. After years of our parents giving him everything, while I struggled alone, he had the audacity to demand that I fund their retirement. The choice I ultimately made wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my own sanity. Before I dive into how my own brother tried to make me pay for our parents' retirement after they gave him everything, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama resonates with you. I grew up in a modest suburban neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. Our house wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable enough for a family of 4. My father, Frank, worked as an accountant at a local firm, and my mother, Marie, taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 10 minutes from our home. And then there was my brother Derek, 3 years older than me, and seemingly perfect in every way. From my earliest memories, Derek was the family star. He was naturally athletic, charming, and had this effortless way of making adults smile. He played baseball, football, and basketball, excelling at all 3. Teachers adored him, coaches praised him, and our parents beamed with pride whenever his name was mentioned. I first noticed the difference in how we were treated when I was around 6 years old. I had brought home a perfect spelling test, proudly displaying my gold star sticker. My mother glanced at it briefly, said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to preparing dinner. Just 30 minutes later, Derek came home with a B- on his math quiz. My parents stopped everything, congratulated him on his effort, and took him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. When Derek hit his first home run in Little League, my parents threw a backyard barbecue and invited the entire extended family. When I won first place in the district science competition, they sent me with our neighbor because they couldn't miss Derek's regular season football game. Christmas mornings told the same story. Derek would unwrap the latest gaming system, expensive sports equipment, or trendy clothes. I would receive practical items like socks, school supplies, or books from the discount section. One year when I was 12, I overheard my mother telling my aunt that they had spent $400 on Derek's new baseball gear because he has real potential, while my $50 art set was more than enough for a hobby. Birthdays followed the same script. Derek's celebrations were elaborate affairs with friends, extended family, and custom cakes. Mine were typically acknowledged with a store-bought cake and maybe 1 or 2 friends allowed over. When I turned 13, my parents actually forgot my birthday entirely because it fell on the same weekend as Derek's regional basketball tournament. Family vacations were always scheduled around Derek's sports calendar. We visited baseball stadiums across the country, planned trips to coincide with his away games, and spent countless summer days at sports camps, where I would sit in the bleachers with a book while my parents cheered from the sidelines. I developed coping mechanisms early. I became fiercely independent, learning that if I wanted something done, I needed to do it myself. I stopped sharing my accomplishments with my parents to avoid the inevitable, underwhelming response. I built emotional walls, telling myself that their approval shouldn't matter. But of course it did. The most painful memory from my childhood happened when I was 14. After months of work, I qualified for the state science fair with my project on renewable energy. The competition fell on the same day as one of Derek's regular season football games. I didn't even bother asking if they would come to support me. I took the bus to the convention center alone, set up my display, and presented to the judges without a single family member present. I won 2nd place overall and a special award from the State Energy Commission. When I came home, trophy in hand, my parents were celebrating in the living room. Derek had scored 2 touchdowns. My mother patted me on the shoulder and said, "That's nice, honey. We're ordering pizza to celebrate Derek's game. You can put your trophy on the shelf in your room." That night, I cried myself to sleep, but it was also the night something shifted inside me. I decided that if my family couldn't see my worth, I would build a life where others would. I threw myself into academics, knowing education was my ticket to independence. I joined clubs where I could shine on my own merits. I started babysitting and taking odd jobs, saving every dollar with the clear vision of someday leaving and never looking back. By the time I was 17, I had emotionally detached from my family in many ways. I showed up for dinners, nodded at appropriate times during conversations about Derek's latest achievements, and counted down the days until college applications were due. My parents existed in my life, but I had stopped expecting anything from them years before. I didn't hate Derek. Not really. It wasn't his fault that our parents had cast him as the golden child and me as the afterthought. Sometimes, I even caught glimpses of him looking uncomfortable with the constant praise and attention. But we were never close. How could we be when every interaction was shadowed by the imbalance between us? The summer before my senior year, I made a silent promise to myself. I would build my own life, create my own success, and find people who valued me for who I was. I would never again measure my worth through the distorted lens of my family's perception. If my parents couldn't see the bright, capable person I was becoming, others would. That determination carried me through my final year of high school. I graduated with honors, applied to colleges alone, and prepared to step into a future entirely of my own making. Little did I know just how completely I would need to cut ties with my past before I could truly move forward. When college application season arrived, I was on my own. My father helped Derek craft his essay's research scholarship opportunities and visit potential schools. For me, the kitchen table conversation went differently. "You know, Audrey," my father said one evening as I sorted through application materials, "your grades are good, but state schools are more practical. The local university has a fine program, and you can live at home to save money." I nodded, already knowing there was no point in arguing. That night, I stayed up researching scholarship opportunities and financial aid options. I applied to 8 schools, including several out of state, all without my parents' knowledge. 2 months later, acceptance letters began arriving. I had been accepted to 6 schools, including a state university 4 hours away, that offered me a partial academic scholarship. When I shared the news, my mother's response was tepid at best. "That's farther than we expected you to go," she said, frowning slightly. "And who's going to pay for that? College is expensive." The bomb dropped a week later during dinner. Derek had been accepted to a prestigious university with a partial football scholarship. My parents couldn't contain their excitement. "We've been saving for college since you were born," my father told Derek proudly. "Between your scholarship and the college fund, you won't have to worry about a thing." I froze, fork midway to my mouth. "College fund? You have a college fund for Derek." My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. My mother cleared her throat. "Well, we started funds for both of you, but with Derek's sports equipment training camps and everything else over the years." She didn't need to finish. There was no fund for me. There had never been a fund for me. Whatever initial intentions they might have had, my education had never been the priority. I accepted the offer from the state university and took out student loans. I found roommates through a university message board, arranged housing, and prepared to leave home without much help from my family. Meanwhile, my parents drove Derek to campus tours, helped him shop for dorm supplies, and discussed which meal plan would best support his athletic training. My move to college was unceremonious. My father drove me in our family sedan, helped carry 2 suitcases and a box of books to my dorm room, and left within the hour to get back for Derek's preseason training. My mother hadn't even come along, claiming she needed to help Derek prepare for his own departure the following week. I stood alone in my half-empty dorm room, surrounded by roommates whose parents were helping them unpack, hang curtains, and arrange furniture. The stark contrast of my situation hit me hard, but I squared my shoulders and got to work setting up my new life. College quickly became a financial juggling act. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, picked up weekend shifts at a local cafe, and still barely managed to cover my expenses. Every semester was a stressful calculation of credit hours versus work hours, trying to balance academics with financial survival. Meanwhile, Derek's college experience was entirely different. My parents attended every home football game, proudly wearing university colors and cheering from premium seats. They joined the Parents Association and hosted tailgate parties. They visited him monthly, taking him and his friends out to dinner. They called him daily to check on his well-being. They called me once every few weeks, conversations typically lasting less than 10 minutes. "How are classes?" my mother would ask. "Good. I made the dean's list again," I would reply. "That's nice. Did you see Derek's game on TV last weekend? He almost scored a touchdown." These interactions reinforced what I already knew. My achievements would always be secondary to Derek's mere participation. It hurt, but it also hardened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. The bright spot in my college experience was my roommate Jasmine. We met on move-in day and quickly became inseparable. She came from a warm, supportive family who soon folded me into their circle. Her mother sent care packages addressed to both of us. Her father called to check on his girls before finals. For the first time, I experienced what family support could feel like. "Your parents are really missing out," Jasmine told me one night after we'd both returned from dinner at her parents' house. "You're amazing, and they don't even see it." During my sophomore year, I discovered computer science. The logical problem-solving, the creative applications, the tangible results all appealed to me. I switched my major from general business to computer science and found my academic passion. Professor Williams, the department chair, became a mentor after noticing my aptitude for programming. She encouraged me to apply for internships, connected me with industry contacts, and pushed me when courses became challenging. "You have a natural talent for this," she told me after reviewing one of my projects. "But more importantly, you have grit. That combination will take you far." I threw myself into coding with the same determination that had carried me through childhood. While other students complained about late nights in the computer lab, I thrived on the challenge. Each successfully completed project, each problem solved, each new skill mastered, was proof that I was building something valuable on my own. My junior year, I landed a competitive summer internship with a tech company in Seattle. The experience was transformative. For the first time, I was in an environment where my analytical thinking and problem-solving abilities were not just acknowledged, but celebrated. My team lead told me I had serious potential and encouraged me to apply for their entry-level positions after graduation. When I called home to share the news, my father answered. "That's nice, Audrey," he said after I explained how significant this opportunity was. "Listen, we can't talk long. We're heading to Derek's conference championship game. Did you know scouts from 3 professional teams will be there?" I hung up and didn't call again for 2 months. By senior year, I had secured a job offer from the Seattle company contingent on graduation. I would be starting at $65,000 annually with benefits and relocation assistance. When I graduated with honors in computer science, neither of my parents attended the ceremony. Derek had a baseball showcase the same weekend. Jasmine's family cheered loudly when my name was called. They took photos, presented me with flowers, and hosted a celebration dinner that evening. Professor Williams attended as well, giving me a card that read, "The tech world has no idea what's coming. Go show them what you're made of." The contrast between my graduation and Derek's couldn't have been more stark. For his graduation, my parents rented a party venue, invited extended family and family friends, and presented him with an expensive watch. His football career hadn't quite panned out as they'd hoped, but he'd been drafted by a minor league baseball team, keeping their professional athlete dreams alive. A week after graduation, I packed my car with everything I owned and prepared to drive to Seattle. My mother hugged me briefly in the driveway. "Seattle is so far away," she said, a hint of complaint in her voice. "That's kind of the point," I replied. My father patted my shoulder awkwardly. "Well, good luck with the computer stuff. Did you hear Derek's signing bonus was $20,000? We're so proud." I nodded, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. As the family home disappeared in my rearview mirror, I felt a weight lifting. 3,000 miles would soon separate me from the constant reminder of my second-place status. In Seattle, no one would know me as Derek's sister. I would simply be Audrey, software developer, building a life on my own terms. 5 years passed in Seattle, and they were transformative. The rainy city became my true home in ways Denver never had been. I started as a junior developer and quickly proved my value, earning promotions and salary increases that reflected my contributions rather than how I compared to someone else. My apartment, initially a small studio I could barely afford, gave way to a comfortable one-bedroom with a view of the city. I decorated it entirely to my taste, with no one to consider but myself. For the first time in my life, I occupied a space that was completely mine, a physical manifestation of the independence I had craved for so long. At work, I developed a reputation for being reliable, innovative, and hardworking. My managers praised my ability to solve complex problems and collaborate effectively with different teams. During my 3rd year, I led the development of a feature that significantly improved user experience, resulting in a company award and a substantial bonus. "You're one of our rising stars," my director told me during a performance review. "Your trajectory here could go as high as you want to take it." The professional validation was healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. After years of having my achievements dismissed or overshadowed, being recognized for my work filled a void I hadn't fully acknowledged. My social life expanded gradually. I joined a hiking group, took cooking classes, and volunteered at a local coding program for girls. Through these activities, I built a circle of friends who knew nothing of my family dynamics. They liked me for who I was, not where I fell in some arbitrary sibling hierarchy. During a company happy hour in my 4th year in Seattle, I met Michael. He worked in the marketing department, and we bonded over our shared love of sci-fi movies and Thai food. Our first date lasted 6 hours, conversation flowing effortlessly between us. By the 3rd date, I knew this relationship was different from any I'd had before. Michael listened when I spoke. He remembered details about my day, my preferences, my goals. He celebrated my work achievements with genuine enthusiasm and supported me through challenges. For my birthday, he organized a surprise party with all my friends, something no one had ever done for me before. 8 months into our relationship, I finally told him about my family. We were sitting on my couch on a rainy Sunday afternoon when the subject of holiday plans came up. "I don't really do family holidays," I said carefully. "I usually volunteer at the community center or take a short trip somewhere." Michael looked curious, but not judgmental. "Any particular reason?" The story poured out of me then, years of built-up hurt and disappointment flowing freely. I told him about Derek, about the constant favoritism, about building my life from scratch while my parents poured everything into my brother. I described Christmases and birthdays, the science fair, and graduation, the college fund that was never for me. When I finished, Michael took my hand gently. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "For what it's worth, I think they missed out on knowing an incredible person." His simple validation brought tears to my eyes. Here was someone who saw me clearly and valued what he saw. It was everything I had yearned for growing up. My contact with my family during those years was minimal. I called on major holidays and birthdays, brief conversations that barely scratched the surface of my life. I deflected questions about visits with vague mentions of work commitments. Once a year, I sent a Christmas card with a generic update. It was a relationship maintained out of obligation rather than connection. Through these limited interactions, I learned that Derek's baseball career hadn't taken off as everyone had hoped. After 3 years in the minor leagues with modest performance, he was still waiting for his big break. My parents remained his biggest fans, attending games whenever possible, and maintaining unwavering faith in his eventual success. "Derek just needs the right opportunity," my mother would say during our calls. "The coaches don't appreciate his unique playing style." I would make non-committal sounds of agreement, wondering if they heard how similar these explanations sounded to the ones they'd made throughout his childhood and college years. Therapy became an important part of my healing journey. My therapist, Dr. Bennett, helped me understand that the dynamics in my family weren't my fault, and that the pain I felt was valid. We worked through my lingering feelings of inadequacy, and my fear that perhaps I was fundamentally less lovable than my brother. "Your parents' inability to love you as you deserved says nothing about your worth and everything about their limitations," Dr. Bennett told me. "You've built an impressive life despite their neglect, not because you needed to prove something, but because that's who you authentically are." Those sessions were often difficult, peeling back layers of hurt I had buried beneath my determination to succeed. But they were also liberating, allowing me to release the responsibility I had unconsciously taken for my parents' behavior. By my 5th year in Seattle, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small townhouse. The day I signed the mortgage papers was surreal. At 30 years old, I owned my home, had a thriving career, a loving relationship, and a circle of friends who felt more like family than my actual relatives ever had. Yet despite these achievements, an emptiness lingered. During one therapy session, I admitted that part of me still hoped for reconciliation with my parents, for them to finally see and appreciate who I had become. "That's a natural desire," Dr. Bennett said gently. "But healing doesn't always include getting the acknowledgement we deserve from those who hurt us. Sometimes, healing means accepting that they may never be capable of giving you what you need." That Thanksgiving, against my better judgment, I flew home to Denver. Michael offered to come with me, but I declined, knowing instinctively that I needed to face my family alone. The visit confirmed everything I had been working through in therapy. Nothing had changed. My parents spent the entire weekend talking about Derek's newest opportunity, a coaching position with a local high school team that they were certain would lead to bigger opportunities. My one promotion mention was met with blank stares, followed by, "Speaking of jobs, did we tell you Derek is considering sports management if coaching doesn't work out?" I left early, changing my flight to return to Seattle 2 days ahead of schedule. On the plane, I made a decision to limit my engagement with my family even further. I couldn't change them, but I could protect myself from continually reopening old wounds. Back in Seattle, I threw myself into work and my relationship with Michael. We moved in together 6 months later, blending our lives with an ease that still surprised me sometimes. His family welcomed me warmly, including me in holidays and family events without hesitation. Then came the news that would disrupt the careful distance I had established. Derek's baseball career was officially over. No team had picked him up for the new season, and at 38, his prospects in professional sports had finally run out. According to my mother's phone call, he was moving back into my parents' house temporarily while he explored his options. I expressed appropriate sympathy and quickly changed the subject, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach. Somehow, I knew this development would eventually impact me, though I couldn't have predicted exactly how. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was in the middle of a code review when my phone lit up with her name. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail and returned the call after work, but something told me to answer. Her voice sounded strained. "Your father is in the hospital. He had a heart attack last night." The world seemed to stop momentarily. Despite our complicated relationship, the news hit me hard. "Is he okay?" "It was mild, thankfully. They're keeping him for observation and running tests. The doctor says he needs to reduce stress and make some lifestyle changes." I didn't hesitate. "I'll be on the next flight out." Michael helped me book a flight and pack a bag. He offered to come with me, but again, I felt this was something I needed to handle alone. "Call me if you change your mind," he said as he dropped me at the airport. "I can be there tomorrow if you need me." I arrived in Denver that evening and took a rideshare directly to the hospital. My mother was sitting beside my father's bed, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. My father lay against the white sheets, his face pale and drawn. For the first time, I noticed how much they had aged since I'd last seen them. "Audrey," my father said, his voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "You didn't need to come all this way." "Of course I did," I replied, setting my bag down. "You're my father." The next morning, while my father underwent some tests, my mother and I sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking terrible coffee. After updating me on my father's condition, she hesitantly broached another subject. "We've been having some financial difficulties," she admitted, staring into her coffee cup. "The medical bills will make things tighter." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "Your father was planning to retire next year, but now I'm not sure how we'll manage. Our savings—" She trailed off, looking embarrassed. "What about your retirement accounts?" I asked. My father had worked as an accountant for over 30 years. Surely they had planned for this. My mother's expression became even more uncomfortable. "We had to make some withdrawals over the years. There were expenses." "What kind of expenses?" I pressed, though I already suspected the answer. She sighed. "Derek needed help with some investments, and then there was his training facility venture that didn't quite take off. We remortgaged the house to help him start that sports management agency 3 years ago." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "So you used your retirement savings to fund Derek's failed businesses." "They weren't failures," she said defensively. "They were learning experiences, and family helps family, Audrey." I bit back the retort that rose automatically to my lips. Family helps family, except when the family member was me struggling through college without support. When we returned to the hospital room, Derek was there. At 38, he still had the athletic build of his youth, though his hairline had receded and lines had formed around his eyes. He gave me an awkward hug. "Good to see you, sis. Been a while." 5 years? I confirmed. "How are you, Derek?" "Oh, transitioning, exploring options." He waved his hand vaguely. "Living at home for a bit while I figure out my next move." That evening, we all had dinner in my father's hospital room, food supplemented with sandwiches Derek had brought. The conversation revolved almost entirely around Derek's glory days and potential future opportunities. My parents reminisced about his high school championships and college recruitment, speaking with the same pride they always had, despite the fact that his sports career had ultimately led nowhere. When I mentioned my recent promotion to senior developer and team lead, Derek interjected before either parent could respond. "Tech jobs are pretty cushy, right? Sitting in an air-conditioned office all day playing with computers. Some people have all the luck." I stared at him incredulous. "Luck had nothing to do with it. I worked 60-hour weeks for years to get where I am." Sure, he said dismissively. "But you always were the brainy one. That stuff comes naturally to you." My mother quickly changed the subject, asking if anyone wanted more coffee. The familiar dynamic settled around us like a well-worn blanket. Derek, the perpetual favorite, his failures reframed as temporary setbacks, while my successes were minimized as lucky breaks or natural talent requiring no real effort. The following day, as I sat alone with my father while my mother went home to shower, he brought up their financial situation. "Your mother's worried about retirement," he said, his voice still weak. "This health scare has made me realize we're not as prepared as we should be." I nodded, waiting. "You've done well for yourself, Audrey. Better than we expected, honestly." He paused, seemingly gathering his thoughts. "Family is important, When parents get older, it's natural for successful children to help out. Though he didn't say it directly, the implication was clear. I was being set up as the solution to their financial problems. Not Derek, who had received their unwavering support for decades. Me, who had built my life without their help. "I'll think about how I might be able to help," I said neutrally, unwilling to commit to anything in that moment. Before leaving Denver, I drove by my parents' house to pick up some clothes my mother had requested. Derek was there lounging on the couch watching a baseball game. "Hey, financial wizard," he said as I entered. "Mom says you're crushing it in Seattle." "I'm doing well," I replied cautiously. "Must be nice." He said, his tone light, but with an undercurrent I recognized from childhood. No family to support fancy tech job, probably making bank. "I worked hard for everything I have, Derek." He sat up straighter. "And I didn't. Do you know how grueling professional sports are? The physical toll, the constant pressure. Just because it didn't work out doesn't mean I didn't sacrifice everything." I didn't respond, gathering my mother's things quickly. As I headed for the door, Derek called after me. "Mom and Dad are worried about retirement, just so you know." I nodded without turning around. "I'm aware." "They did everything for us growing up," he added. "Everything." I paused, then one hand on the doorknob. "They did everything for you, Derek. I did everything for myself." I left before he could respond, the familiar heaviness settling in my chest. As I drove away from my childhood home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a conversation that had been brewing for years. 2 weeks after returning to Seattle, I received an unexpected call from Derek. Seeing his name on my phone screen sent a wave of anxiety through me, but I answered anyway. "Audrey, how's my successful sister doing in rainy Seattle?" His voice was jovial, as if we spoke regularly. "I'm fine, Derek. What's up?" I kept my tone neutral, already on guard. "Can't a brother just call to catch up? How's that tech job treating you, still leading a team of computer geniuses?" "Work is good," I said cautiously. "How are things in Denver?" "Oh, you know, same old, living with Mom and Dad while I network and explore opportunities. Did I tell you I'm considering sports broadcasting? I've got some connections at local stations." We chatted superficially for a few minutes. He asked about Michael, about my house, about Seattle weather. I answered politely but briefly, waiting for the real reason behind this unexpected call. Finally, after about 10 minutes, his tone shifted. "So, I've been thinking about Mom and Dad's situation." He began, his voice taking on a serious quality I rarely heard from him. "Dad's health scare really highlighted how unprepared they are for retirement." "Yes, it's concerning," I agreed. "I've been looking at their finances with them," Derek continued. "They really don't have much saved. The house has a second mortgage, Dad's pension isn't great, and Mom's teacher retirement won't cover much." I remained silent, sensing where this was heading. "The thing is, Audrey," he said, his voice becoming persuasive, "they sacrificed everything for us growing up. All those years of putting us first, making sure we had every opportunity. Now they need help, and well, I'm not in a position to do much financially right now. And I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "Come on, sis. You're making tech money in Seattle, no kids, dual income with Michael. Mom mentioned your last promotion probably put you over 6 figures. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to get my career on solid ground." I gripped the phone tighter. "Derek, I built my career from nothing. I paid for college myself, worked multiple jobs, took out loans that I just finished paying off 3 years ago. Everything I have, I earned through hard work and sacrifice." "Nobody's saying you didn't work hard," he said, his tone becoming slightly condescending. "But let's be real. You've always been the responsible one, the planner. Mom and Dad knew they could count on you to be successful." That statement hit me like a physical blow. All those years of being overlooked, of having my achievements dismissed, and now suddenly, my success was not only acknowledged, but expected and taken for granted. "They've been talking about this for a while," Derek continued, oblivious to my reaction. "They always figured you'd help them in retirement. It just makes sense given your situation compared to mine." "They discussed this with you, but not with me," I asked, my voice tight. "Well, you know how they are. They wouldn't want to pressure you directly. But family takes care of family, right? And let's face it, they gave us everything growing up." Something snapped inside me. "They gave you everything, Derek. They paid for your education, funded your sports careers, backed your failed businesses. They remortgaged their house for your ventures. They attended every game, celebrated every minor achievement, made excuses for every failure. I got none of that. None." "Whoa, that's ancient history," Derek said, sounding genuinely surprised by my outburst. "Are you still holding on to childhood jealousy? We're adults now, Audrey." "Yes, we are adults, and as adults, we're responsible for our own choices. They chose to invest everything in you. You chose to squander those opportunities. And now you both expect me to foot the bill for those decisions." "It's not like that," he protested. "They're getting older. Dad's health isn't great. They need help, and you're in the best position to provide it. It's not complicated." "Actually, Derek, it is complicated. 35 years of complicated family dynamics. I've spent my entire adult life becoming financially independent because I had to. No one helped me. No one supported me. And now that I've succeeded despite that lack of support, suddenly, I'm responsible for everyone." The line went quiet for a moment. When Derek spoke again, his tone had changed. "I always knew you were selfish," he said coldly. "Always focused on yourself, always keeping score. Mom and Dad gave you a good home and education opportunities." I laughed without humor. "The bare minimum, Derek. They gave me the bare minimum while giving you everything, and you know what I'm grateful for that now. It made me strong, independent, and successful. But it doesn't obligate me to bankroll their retirement or subsidize your continued dependence on them." "So, what are you saying? You're just going to leave them struggling in their golden years because of some perceived childhood slights?" "I'm saying I need to think about this. And I'm saying that if there's going to be any discussion about me providing financial support, it needs to include accountability for how we got here and clear boundaries moving forward." Derek's voice hardened. "They're your parents, Audrey. This isn't a business negotiation." "No, it's not," I agreed. "It's 35 years of family history that can't be ignored just because it's inconvenient now." "Whatever," he said dismissively. "I thought you were better than this. Guess I was wrong." The call ended abruptly, leaving me shaking with anger and hurt. I sat on my couch, trying to process what had just happened. After years of being the family afterthought, I was now suddenly expected to be the family savior, with no acknowledgement of the past or how it had shaped our current situations. Michael found me still sitting there an hour later, tears streaming down my face. I told him everything, the words pouring out between sobs. "I knew they would never see me," I said finally. "But I never thought they would use me like this." He held me close. "You don't owe them this, Audrey. Not after everything you've told me." "But they're my parents," I whispered. What kind of daughter refuses to help her aging parents? The kind who recognizes manipulation and sets healthy boundaries, he said firmly. There's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. That night, I called Jasmine, my college roommate, who had witnessed firsthand the disparity in how my family treated me. Her response was immediate and emphatic. "Absolutely not," she said when I explained the situation. "They made their bed with Derek, and now they want you to lie in it. That's not happening on my watch." Between Michael's unwavering support and Jasmine's righteous indignation on my behalf, I began to see the situation more clearly. This wasn't about being a good daughter or a generous sister. This was about finally confronting the family dynamics that had shaped my entire life. 3 days after Derek's call, I made a decision. I would go back to Denver one more time. Not to acquiesce to their expectations, but to have the conversation we should have had years ago. It was time for truth, accountability, and boundaries, whatever the outcome might be. I didn't tell my family I was coming. I booked a flight to Denver for the following weekend, took Friday off work, and prepared myself mentally for what would undoubtedly be a difficult confrontation. Michael drove me to the airport, concern evident in his eyes. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" he asked as we pulled up to the departures area. "I'm sure," I replied, squeezing his hand. "This is something I need to do myself, but I'll call you after, no matter how it goes." "I love you," he said simply, "and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." The flight to Denver gave me time to organize my thoughts. I wasn't coming to argue or accuse, but I wasn't coming to capitulate either. I needed my family to understand my perspective before any decisions about financial support could be made. I rented a car at the airport and drove directly to my parents' house, arriving around noon on Friday. 3 cars sat in the driveway: my parents' sedan, Derek's sports car that had seen better days, and an unfamiliar compact that I guessed belonged to a friend of my mother's. I knocked on the door, hearing familiar voices inside. My mother answered, her expression shifting rapidly from surprise to confusion to a forced smile. "Audrey, what are you doing here? We weren't expecting you." "I know," I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk. All of us." My father was in his recliner watching a baseball game, looking better than he had in the hospital, but still frail. Derek sat on the couch, and my mother's friend, a woman I vaguely recognized from her teaching days, occupied an armchair. "Audrey's here," my mother announced unnecessarily. My father muted the TV. "This is a surprise." "I can leave if this is a family discussion," my mother's friend offered, already standing. "That might be best, Linda," my mother said apologetically. "I'll call you later." Once Linda had left, I took a deep breath and addressed my family. "I think we need to have a conversation about expectations and history before we discuss any financial arrangements." Derek rolled his eyes. "Here we go. I told you guys she'd make this complicated." "It is complicated," I said evenly. "And pretending it isn't won't help anyone. Audrey, if this is about helping us in retirement, we appreciate any assistance you can provide," my father began. "We know you've done well for yourself." "This isn't just about retirement," I clarified. "This is about our entire family dynamic and how it's led to this moment. I think we need to be honest about some things before we can move forward." My mother looked uncomfortable. "What things exactly?" "The fact that Derek has always been the favorite. The fact that you invested everything in him and virtually nothing in me. The fact that I built my career and financial stability completely on my own, while Derek received every advantage and still ended up living with you at 38. The room went completely silent. My father's face reddened. My mother looked away, and Derek stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous," he said. "Are you still hanging on to childhood jealousy? Grow up, Audrey." "I have grown up," I replied calmly. "That's why I'm here having this conversation, instead of just saying no over the phone." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I had prepared. Inside were copies of my college loan statements, my scholarship award letter pay stubs from my college jobs, and a spreadsheet I had created documenting the financial journey of my education, an early career. I put myself through college, I said, placing the documents on the coffee table. I worked 20 to 30 hours a week while maintaining a full course load. I graduated with $42,000 in student loan debt that took me 6 years to pay off. During that time, I lived with roommates, drove a car with 200,000 miles on it, and budgeted every penny. I looked directly at my parents. Meanwhile, you paid for Derek's education. You bought him a new car for graduation. You funded his training after college. You remortgaged your house to invest in his business ideas. You did all of this while knowing you weren't adequately saving for your own retirement. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We did what we thought was best. Derek needed more support. And I didn't, I asked quietly. You were always so independent, so capable, my father said defensively. Derek needed more guidance, more help. He needed it because you trained him to need it, I pointed out. You trained me to be independent because you gave me no other choice. Derek scoffed. So what? You turned out fine. Better than fine according to your little success story. What are you complaining about? I'm not complaining. I'm establishing facts before we discuss your expectation that I'll fund the retirement you failed to plan for because you were too busy funding Derek's failed career attempts. My mother wiped her eyes. Audrey, we know we weren't perfect parents, but we loved you both. We still do. I don't doubt that you love me, I said, softening slightly. But love without respect, without recognition, without support isn't enough. And now you're asking me for significant financial support without acknowledging any of our history. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What exactly do you want from us, Audrey? An apology for not being perfect parents, for making mistakes. I want acknowledgement of the reality of our family dynamic. I want accountability for the choices that led to this financial situation. And I want a plan moving forward that doesn't place the entire burden on me while Derek continues to live consequence-free. Derek stood up, anger evident in his posture. This is unbelievable. You come in here with your spreadsheets and your accusations acting like you're some kind of victim? We're talking about helping our parents, and you're turning it into a therapy session. I'm setting boundaries, I corrected him. Something this family has never allowed me to do. My mother looked between us, distress evident on her face. Please, let's not fight. We're family. Yes, we are family, I agreed, which is why I'm proposing a solution that acknowledges our shared responsibility while respecting my own financial independence. I outlined the plan I had developed. I would help pay for a financial advisor to work with my parents on restructuring their debt and creating a realistic retirement plan. I would contribute a reasonable monthly amount toward their expenses contingent on Derek also contributing a percentage of any income he earned. I would help them explore downsizing options for their house to free up equity. What I would not do is become their primary means of support, while Derek continued to live with them, contribution-free. As I finished explaining, my father looked thoughtful, my mother looked torn, and Derek looked furious. So basically you'll help only if you can control everything and force me to pay too, Derek summarized angrily. I'm offering help with conditions that protect me from being exploited, I corrected. There's a difference. My mother started to speak, but my father interrupted her. Audrey, there's something you should know. He glanced at my mother, who nodded reluctantly. We did save for your college. We had funds for both you and Derek. I stared at him confused. What are you talking about? You told me there was no money for my education. My father looked down at his hands. By the time you were ready for college, we had used your fund for Derek's training camps and equipment. His opportunities seemed time-sensitive. We thought we'd have time to rebuild your fund, but the revelation hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't just failed to save for me. They had actively taken what was meant for me and given it to Derek. The betrayal was even deeper than I had realized. You took my college fund and gave it to Derek, I repeated, needing to hear it confirmed. We were going to pay it back, my mother said weakly. But there were always expenses with Derek's sports, and then later with his business ventures. A strange calm settled over me. This final piece of information clarified everything. This wasn't just about favoritism or different parenting approaches. This was about actively sacrificing my future for Derek's making a conscious choice to prioritize his opportunities over mine. I see, I said quietly. Thank you for being honest finally. Derek, perhaps sensing the shift in my demeanor, attempted to diffuse the tension. Look, we all made choices. I didn't ask them to use your college fund. That's on them, not me. You're right, I agreed. They made that choice, just like they're making choices now about retirement, and I'm making my choice too. I stood up, gathering my documents and returning them to my bag. I can't help you financially. Not now, possibly not ever. The breach of trust is too significant, and there's no acknowledgement of responsibility from any of you. So that's it? My father asked incredulously. We tell you something difficult, and you just walk away. You didn't tell me something difficult, I corrected him. You confessed to a betrayal that affected the entire course of my life, and you're still not sorry for it. You're just sorry that I found out. Family helps family, my mother insisted, her voice taking on a pleading quality. After everything we've done for you. The irony of her statement was almost laughable. That's exactly the point, Mom. After everything you've done and everything you haven't done, I'm making the healthiest choice for myself. Derek stood directly in my path as I headed for the door. You owe this family, Audrey. You can't just walk away because your feelings are hurt about ancient history. I looked at my brother, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. He wasn't a villain in this story, but he was complicit in maintaining a dynamic that benefited him at my expense, and he still expected that dynamic to continue. I don't owe you anything, Derek. Not my money, not my guilt, not my compliance. I paid any familial debt through years of being overlooked and undervalued. My account is clear. I stepped around him and walked to the door. No one called after me or tried to stop me. As I reached for the handle, I turned back one last time. I wish you all well, truly. I hope you find solutions to your financial concerns, but they won't be coming from me. In the driveway, I paused before getting into my rental car. The house I had grown up in, the family that had shaped me both through their attention and their neglect, the expectations that had weighed on me my entire life, all seemed smaller somehow. I took out my phone and systematically deleted their contact information, not in anger, but in liberation. As I drove away, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a profound sense of clarity. Some relationships couldn't be fixed. Some patterns couldn't be broken. And sometimes, the most loving thing you could do for yourself, and ultimately for others, was to walk away. A year passed after that final confrontation with my family. At first, there were attempts at contact, pleading voicemails from my mother, angry texts from Derek, even a formal letter from my father, outlining all they had done for me growing up. I filtered their emails, blocked their numbers, and returned the letter unopened. It wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. The first few months were the hardest. Despite everything, these were the people who had raised me, who had been constants in my life, even if those constants were often painful. I questioned my decision during sleepless nights, wondering if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But with each therapy session, each conversation with Michael and my chosen family, the certainty grew that I had made the right choice. My career continued to flourish. I was promoted to development manager, leading a team of 12 engineers on projects that challenged and excited me. The company culture valued work-life balance, innovation, and mutual respect, all things I had created for myself but never experienced in my family of origin. Michael proposed on a rainy Sunday morning in our kitchen. Nothing elaborate or showy, just a simple question asked with love and certainty. "I want to build a family with you," he said. "One where everyone is valued exactly as they are." I said yes without hesitation. We planned a small wedding with the people who had shown up for us consistently: Jasmine and her family friends from work and our community, Michael's relatives who had welcomed me warmly from the beginning. I sent no invitations to Denver. Occasionally, news of my family reached me through distant connections. My parents had sold their house and downsized to a condo using the equity to fund their retirement. Derek had finally found steady employment as a high school sports coach. They were adapting to the reality that their golden child would not be their retirement plan, and neither would I. In therapy, I worked through the lingering guilt that surfaced periodically. Dr. Bennett helped me understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, that walking away from toxic relationships was sometimes the healthiest choice for everyone involved. "You've given them an opportunity to reflect on their choices," she told me. "Whether they take that opportunity is up to them, but you're no longer enabling patterns that hurt you and ultimately didn't serve them either." I channeled my experiences into positive action. I mentored young women in tech, especially those from challenging backgrounds or without family support. I established a small scholarship at my alma mater specifically for students who were self-supporting through college. I volunteered with organizations that helped first-generation professionals navigate corporate environments. Michael and I created new traditions for holidays, birthdays, and celebrations, intentionally building the kind of supportive, joyful environment I had never experienced growing up. Our home became a gathering place for friends, a safe harbor for those navigating difficult family situations of their own. During one therapy session near the anniversary of my final visit to Denver, Dr. Bennett asked me a question that crystallized everything I had learned through this journey. "What would you say to your younger self now, Audrey? The child who tried so hard to earn love and recognition that were freely given to her brother." I thought for a moment before answering. I would tell her that her worth isn't determined by her parents' ability to see it, that the qualities they overlooked, her independence, her resilience, her determination, would become her greatest strengths, that one day she would build a life filled with people who value her exactly as she is, not for what she can do for them or how she compares to someone else. Dr. Bennett smiled. "And what would you say to people watching who might be in similar situations?" The question caught me off guard, but the answer came naturally. I would tell them that walking away isn't giving up, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, that you can love someone and still recognize that the relationship is harming you. That family should be about mutual respect and support, not one-sided sacrifice. And most importantly, that it's never too late to build the life and the family you deserve, even if that family isn't the one you were born into. As I look back on the journey that brought me here, I feel a deep sense of peace. The pain hasn't disappeared entirely, nor has the sense of loss for the family relationships I wished I could have had. But those feelings no longer define me or direct my choices. I've learned that sometimes the most profound act of self-love is walking away from people who cannot or will not value you, even when those people are family. In choosing myself, I've found freedom. In setting boundaries, I've found peace. In building my chosen family, I've found the love and acceptance I always deserved. And in sharing my story, I hope others might find the courage to do the same. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to distance yourself from family for your own well-being? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to my channel and sharing this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve to be valued for exactly who you are.